Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Fairy Tale Wiki Twitter Talk. This is episode 10, and I am the King of Uncool, your host. Today I've got Aiko joining me. He's a member of the Fairy Tale Discord that Spider-Man set up, and he's also someone who follows us on Twitter. So, Aiko, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing excellent today. How about yourself?
Doing good, too. Thank you for asking, and thank you for joining us as well. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here.
Yeah, this podcast has been a great listen over the probably 2 weeks that I've been exposed to it.
I'm glad to hear you think so, man, and I'm glad that you're part of it now. So, well, all right, let's just jump right into it. How did you become a fan of Fairy Tale?
So, Fairy Tale in specific, I had finished watching Goblin Slayer, and that was really the thing that got me into anime. And after that, there was like, I don't know what I want to do with my time. I didn't know what to do, where to go. Then there was also this like impending sense of just loss of direction, just in life in general. And then eventually I talked to a buddy. He was like, "Hey, Fairy Tale, it's this great anime. You should watch it." And I just, all right, you started me on this anime thing, so I'll listen to you. And then so I watched it, and I got through probably about 10 episodes, and I just loved the characters. They were just fun to watch, listen to. The dynamics were good, story writing was good, and then eventually got, 30, 40 episodes in, and it was just that was my favorite show. This was probably a year ago,
So, fairly recent.
fairly recently.
That's cool. And it seems like you got into it pretty fast. And at the same time, it's because of this friend of yours you mentioned.
Yes, he definitely a guiding source for me, and I can talk to him whenever I need to. And we were talking one day, and he just put the name out there, and because I trust him so much, I just watched it, and then the show held its own. Easily held its own.
Yeah, something you mentioned was that you weren't in a great place at the time. And that's really a common theme that I've been hearing over the course of these interviews that people weren't doing well due to, relationship issues or real life issues or some other kind of void. And Fairy Tale effectively helped them fill it by introducing to them upbeat scenarios, fun characters, good humor, and the like. So would you say that's pretty much the case for you?
Yeah, I think the friendship. I know Dav talked a lot about this last time, but the friendship aspect is just whole heartwarming. Just you feel good when you see it. I think that's a big appeal of the show.
Who would you say is your favorite character in the show?
Um, I think Natsu. I know it's the main character, but I think Natsu has a lot of nuance to him. How he's searching for Igneel, his father, which was revealed very early, probably 10 episodes, and he's searching for the reason as to why he's here, why he can do the things that he can do. But at the same time, he's also this like he's a powerhouse. He's definitely the Rock. He's upbeat, and as Natsu at the beginning, Natsu was just, "You want to come join the guild? Yeah, let's go join the guild. Let's go, be friends and do these cool things together." So yeah, he's definitely a solid emotional character, but he also has some backstory and a reason to continue on his journey.
Now, flipping that aside, who would you say your least favorite character in the story is?
I think the least favorite character is Master Jose, which I've never heard. I've kind of stood alone on this, but whenever I saw him just act or move, I hated him with a like desire, which in him being the villain, that's what you want. So it was great writing in that regard for me to not like the guy, but whenever I saw him, it was just come on Natsu, come on Urza, let's take him out, let's do something. Like the whole Phantom arc, just excellent in that regard of you don't like the villains, and then eventually once it passes, with Juvia and the others, you realize that maybe they're not so bad. Maybe it was all just Master Jose.
So you just mentioned the Phantom Lord arc. What would you say is your favorite arc in the series?
I have two, definitely two. The Phantom Lord arc was the one where I fell in love with the show, where I realized that this is the show that is going to be my mainstay for a long, long time. That's just because we see Lucy get in that predicament. This is fairly early, so I'll try to hold back on spoilers, but we'll see. But Lucy gets in a predicament. They're trying to get her, and then, but you just see, you know, everybody in that guild. Lucy's so new, but everybody in that guild would risk their life for her. And just seeing Natsu on that one episode chase after the Iron Dragon Slayer and go get Lucy was just it. I felt it, you know. I knew right there that every time I watch the show, I'm gonna see relationships being built and dynamics being made, and then you can also see Urza. You know, we will never sell out our friends. It's just like every time you hear something like that, just you get goosebumps and you know that they're doing things for the right reason. And so that leads into the other one, the Tower of Heaven arc. I love it because it shows Urza has a soft side. Because throughout the whole, 30 episodes, Urza has always just been the hard, right to battle kind of person, right? Always comfortable in armor. And then in Tower of Heaven, we realized that she wasn't always like that. But because of everything she went through, she became that way. And we also learn about, Jalal and the Urza's relationship, but we see Urza power through. And that's the cool part for me is that she's able to power through, and that you see Natsu, Gray, and Elfman help her power through. Like it's the retaining the theme of helping and friends, but you also see Urza take responsibility and go forward by herself.
Yeah, you totally do. And those are also two arcs that were pretty early on that really established what these characters are about. So I want to ask you a bit about the story progression in the series, because you just mentioned that your favorite arcs are pretty early on. I mean, those, as far as chapters go, are within the first 100 chapters. And the series is about 540 something, and plus the sequel, which we could talk a little bit about later if you'd like. But how do you feel about how the story progressed? Because a lot of people often aren't happy, or if they are, they still would enjoy the beginning part more, depending on who you ask. So, what's your take on that?
I like the story progression, honestly. I think the only reason that I have a favoritism towards these earlier bits is just that was, the goosebump moment where I was just so intrigued in the show. But as it progresses, you meet the Dragon Twins, um, you progress and you see everybody's lore. And that's the cool part about the story progression is that as you're going forward, you're also going backward and you're seeing, I guess Mira Jane's lore and Elfman, Urza, like I said, and Natsu. As you keep going backwards. So it starts right at Lucy, and then it just elongates both ways. So you have this huge universe of past, present, future that you get to think about as you're watching. So I think the storytelling is very good in that regard.
So, turning that around a bit, what are some of your least favorite arcs in the series?
I didn't have any specifically disliked arcs. I think all of them had a reason. Um, I wasn't too fond of a specific episode, which was the first meeting of Levy. I felt like where the with the ancient scripts, I felt that was kind of there for comic relief, kind of like a filler episode. And obviously, looking back on it now, it's the first time we see Levy, sorry, and the first time we see how important she is. But it's felt like because we've done so good with writing and lore and future, we could have done something better for Levy's introduction. But just arcs on their own, I honestly don't think that there's one that I could name that isn't like doesn't have a purpose in the story that if it weren't there, then I would be sad because it's just such importance.
Well, you're definitely right about that episode essentially being filler. From my memory, though I might be misremembering, it was adapted from a special chapter, which is effectively just a side that came along with one of the volumes, and it was just adapted and extended to make a full length episode. So, I mean, it's not really a surprise that you don't like it, especially considering some of the very odd antics that went on.
Yeah, I guess also there was no answer to that problem because towards the end of the episode, the problem was still there, and then the next episode of the anime, the problem was gone, and so I guess also just there was no answer to that, which was kind of odd.
Yeah, that was definitely also something that the anime added on because at the end of the corresponding special chapter in the manga, it was actually resolved. So the anime kind of just decided to make it, let's just say they tried to extend the problem a little bit and then act like it never happened, which has happened in a couple other cases. I remember a handful of filler episodes that had a very similar situation. For example, one where Lucy ended up turning invisible.
Oh yes, although to be fair, sometimes you do need filler episodes just to enable better storytelling for the rest of the arcs. But yeah, the Lucy turning invisible, Levy, and the ancient scripts, just odd one-offs. But what is nice, they're few and far in between.
That they are, and filler in general tends to be somewhat underrated for its ability to help characters develop because it is that breathing space in between the heavy action scenes and the heavy dramatic moments that allow characters to more clearly flesh out their personalities and abilities and let you understand them and take those characteristics and then put them in those dramatic moments or those action moments and really let them shine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as is we have the filler episodes, and then those often move straight into arcs, and then the arcs build up usually as an arc would, but in fairy tale specifically, it's just it's it waits a little bit and then it spikes up really hard before it climaxes and then comes back down. So those filler episodes do, in a way, like you said, give that breathing space and character development to lead into the arcs. So even though they are one-offs, like I said, they still do provide a little bit of importance for the development of each individual character instead of a whole story.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And talking about development a bit, you did mention that you started with the anime, and we've been talking about anime and filler and the like. But what's your experience been with the fairy tale manga?
Um, I read a decent bit, not all of it, but a decent bit. I think the manga is cool in the fact that you can picture, obviously you have the illustrations that are helping you, but similar to how you read a chapter book, you can really picture everything in your head. So everything that goes on to some degree is to your own likeness, right? And so at least as I read the manga, I saw these things. And each time I saw something, that would spike an idea. And these ideas that I would have, throughout the day, I'd be going about my day eating lunch, and then I'd think, you know, what's Natsu going to do? What's Urza's going to do? What kind of dynamic is this going to have? And then I'll start thinking about it. The dynamic will go this way, or Natsu's going to do this, or Lucy and Natsu are going to fall into this problem, right? And so, what's cool about the manga, in my experience, is that even though it is a storyline that it has established, it lets you think and kind of, I guess, explore, for lack of a better term, all the possibilities and all the details that the anime doesn't show.
Yeah, definitely. That's what a lot of people love about fairy tale and generally long running series is that ability to get invested in the details and really theory craft. In some cases, that allows people to write fan fiction or draw fan art, and in other cases, they join servers. So let's talk about that for a bit. You're a member of the Fairy Tale Discord server that previous guests like Spider Man, Michelle, and Dav have talked about. So, what's your experience been with the server so far, and how did you initially get into it?
I was getting into it was interesting because not interesting, but I was going through the wiki trying to find information on Urza for fan art, and I saw an ad that said fairy tale or like Hiro Mishima works, and I clicked it. Because I'm fairly familiar with Discord. I have a lot of friends who have servers, and I've made servers, and so I know Discord. I know people are great usually on this platform, so let's join. I joined up, and just immediately everybody said welcome in the chat, and I just you feel welcomed. And then I think the day of or a day after, I joined a voice chat with Dav, Jinx, and Michelle, and we just the chemistry was there. I I had never been in a discussion with either of those two, but every time we talked, every time I talked to them, they talked to me. It wasn't a dismissive tone. They were welcoming and you wanted to be there. And I've stuck around for a while now, and I definitely recommend it to anybody who wants to talk about Mishima works or just any work in general, any anime, or you just want to find people.
So after that initial welcome, what really made you stick around afterwards?
After that initial welcome, maybe the day of or the day after, I joined a voice chat with Jinx, Dav, and Michelle. And every time you talk to them or they talk to you, there was genuine listening and genuine responses. And every every sentence you made had an impact, and they were, you could tell that they cared. That community is definitely what drives good servers, and I wanted to be there because each person genuinely cared about me, even though I was new, even though they didn't know who I was, where I came from. They cared and they wanted to talk, and so it's just it's a tremendous Discord for anybody. If you want to talk about Mishima works or just anime or just want people to talk to, it's a great server because everybody in that server will listen to you just about no matter what you say.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think Spider-Man would be very happy to hear you say that, considering that that's essentially been his goal, is creating a space where everybody can feel welcomed and can talk about their passions openly without the fear of getting judged or getting ridiculed for liking fairy tale or whatever else.
Absolutely. He's done a great job at that. So have the mods. And just, you hear people say this community, that community. This Discord genuinely is a community. It's a network of people looking out for one each other, talking to one each other, feeding off one another, and it's just everything we do is together, and it's great like that. So thank you, Spidey and Dav and all the mods for doing that.
Yeah, shout out to all you guys. Now, to touch on something you mentioned very briefly, you were on the wiki looking for information on Urza so you could do fan art. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So yeah, so after I saw Goblin Slayer, I got in love with the anime style. What kind of different styles we could have, um, you know, what we could do with the character. Can we change? Could I change Urza to make her look, you know, angry or cute or just straight happy? What could I do? And what kind of um, outfits? Because Urza's very fun to draw just because of the requip. So you could have 7, 8, 9 different outfits that you could put on, and each outfit would give a different feeling as you looked. So I went into the wiki just to make sure that anything I drew was canon and it made sense to Urza. You know, what would Urza be doing in this particular, get up? Where would she be going? What kind of, monster would she be fighting? And we see in pre 2014, she's in her armor a lot, which she's in her armor throughout the whole series, but specifically in post 2014 with the studio change, we see her a lot in the dual katana form, and that's just cool to me that she can do so much with one magical power, that she can have so many different, not personalities, but just ways of fighting and ways of handling things. But additionally, as you go through the wiki, you see so many different takes on things, and there are discussion pages, which is really cool because it shows you that this is a universe where not everything's objective. We have disagreements, and those disagreements often lead to surreal artwork or awesome fan fictions or spin-offs. That's the cool part about the wiki, and that's the cool part about fanfics and spin-offs and artwork in general, is that if you do your research, you can stay canon but also explore so many different routes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I often hear from fan fiction writers that when they want to get information about a series, it's much easier to go to a well-written wiki like Fairy Tail Wiki or One Piece Wiki or Bleach Wiki or something along those lines to get that information in a condensed format, because that's a lot easier than reading through 200 chapters to get a general idea of Lucy's personality or the personality of Natsu or something like that, because it's right there on the wiki for you, and it's much easier to take that little, 5 sentence blurb and construct something out of it relative to the situations that you're putting them in your fan fiction or in your head canon or whatever. And I'm really glad to hear that you were using the wiki for that purpose, because that's exactly what we were all writing on the wiki for, to help people do exactly that. And you are right, we had a lot of disagreements over the years, but it made everything better in the end.
The wiki has been really, the writing on the pages themselves make it so easy. Like you said, the 5, 6 sentence blurb to just read and be like, all right, I know a little bit about Lucy, but that little bit is enough to write this whole sub story. And then you go read about Natsu, and then you realize that Natsu's relationship with Lucy is different than Natsu's relationship with Urza and his relationship with Gray. And it's just all beautifully written in the wiki that makes it so precise that even though you only have those 5, 6 sentences, you definitely get probably 10, 20 sentences worth of information and just thought process building in those few sentences.
It's like the saying goes, brevity is the soul of wit. So the shorter and more concise you can make something while still keeping to the heart of it, the more people get out of it, because that's a lot more valuable in the end than, a 3 paragraph summary of events exactly as they happen. Because if I wanted that, I could just go read the chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's also the beautiful part about this wiki is that if you don't know all that much, you have all the different links, and through all those different links, you can find, you know, the manga chapter, or you know, one way or another, you can find the source material for what you're looking for if you do want to, read more, gather more information, or just learn more about the characters. And I think that's cool about the wiki, because not every wiki has that.
Yeah, certainly not. It's definitely something that's important, but also very time consuming. We spent years building that and we're still not finished. And to be truthful, you'll never be finished. I mean, not only is the series continuing, but there's still stuff from the old series that still has to get added, because just the volume of things and the consistent rewriting and editing process, it really sucks people's time out. And, when you're a young teenager, maybe you got more free time, but when you're in your 20s, yeah, not really a thing anymore.
Yeah, yeah, the time is a factor, but I would like to think at least that it was time well spent, because as you write, you learn, right? Because you're reading what you're writing, so you're constantly teaching yourself more and more details about the subject.
And also you're working with people who are your close friends, so the people you spend all this time writing with and consulting with eventually become the people you're talking to on a Friday night while you're all having pizza and chilling out on the internet, which is what a lot of us are doing these days given the current situation with COVID-19.
Yeah, that if you didn't have time before, probably have time now. Unfortunate situation for sure, but got to make the most of it. And as depressing as times can get, I think fairy tale is definitely one of the ways. Like, it lifted me out, it could definitely lift other people out. And then this whole community, like I said, it's just absolutely tremendous.
Absolutely. So let's talk a bit more about Fairy Tale and what we were talking about when it comes to series content. There's currently the Fairy Tale sequel, The 100-Year Quest. So have you been following it? And if so, what do you think about it so far?
I've followed it. I'm not 100% caught up. Like, I have 3 or 4 chapters to go, but everything that I've read so far, I honestly quite like it. There are a few, not holes, but things I wish people would expand on. But despite that, I still think that it still does the whole frontwards and backwards thing, like I was talking about. Where as it goes forward, it elongates the lore, and so every time you read a new chapter, you learn something, and then you progress the story, and then you learn something more, and you progress the story as well.
Totally, and I think that's also what Mishima's been going for as well, to really expand things, because this is also the first time we've, within the context of the series, left the continent. So now we're in a totally new area with all these weird things going on that we really don't know anything about. But for the most part, people seem to be enjoying that.
Absolutely. I think as it, just to stay away from spoilers, I guess all I'm going to say is Five Dragon Gods. The way that they move towards, not only Natsu, not only Galil, but just pushing towards these beings of just power. It's really cool to watch that develop. And it definitely moves in a way that you could predict what's happening, but you don't know. And that's why you want to keep reading. There's definitely uncertainty in everything that you read, but eventually it comes to your conclusion and you're left feeling fulfilled.
Absolutely. And speaking of fulfillment from reading, what are some other manga that you enjoy? Are you reading Mishima's Eden Zero manga, or is there something else you'd like to talk about?
I am reading a little bit of Eden Zero. Not enough to the point where I think I could really dive deep into the story, but I am reading it just because I like the fairy tale manga so much. And as I read, I find myself liking the story more and more. Mishima really does this great way, like he did with Fairy Tale, of building a universe, not just a line of story, right? He's building this whole three-dimensional universe. And as I read Eden Zero, the little bit that I have, I realize that I'm getting the same sensation with Fairy Tale, where it's just my mind's going off in all these different directions, and I'm thinking about what could happen, or what will happen, or what probably won't happen, but might be kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure. And also, Spider-Man and Dav have been on my ass for a couple weeks now to get caught up with the Eden Zero. And if they're listening, guys, I'll get to it eventually. You can stop haggling me for it. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Dab loves that series. I know he loves it too because he's mentioned it several times in the chat. Just we're not even talking about Eden Zero, and then it'll be, oh hey Michelle, did you read that new Eden Zero? And it's cool to listen to because Eden Zero has that same attraction factor because it's so well written. But it's definitely entertaining to hear them dive deep about the lore of that whole series.
If I read it, I'm sure I would agree. So we'll see once I finally get into it. But speaking of get into, I just want to open this up now. So, okay, is there anything else that you would like to talk about? A series, a project, an anime, whatever, man. Sky's the limit right now.
I guess we touched on a few things. Bleach is coming back. I know people are very excited. I know in our server, there's a lot of people from from the Fairy Tale server, I should say, that have a Bleach server. That's pretty active. I'm excited for that. Additionally, I think artwork's important to me. But I know you guys retweeted a lot on the Fairy Tale Wiki, but there's so many great artists like Tristan, Dudo, myself. If I consider myself good, that's up for the viewers. But there's so many great artists and great people to give feedback on the art too, just in that community. And then one more thing, the One Piece has 1,000 episodes. Why?
Are you asking me a question? Or are you about to make a point?
A little bit of both, because One Piece, good development, good story, great art. It's just so daunting to people. And I was gonna ask, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but definitely watching Fairy Tale being also one of the bigger series, like Dragon Ball Z, just having 300, 400, 500 episodes. What do you think about seeing a daunting anime like One Piece, like Dragon Ball, like Fairy Tale, and deciding whether to go on it based on the episode count?
So for me personally, I don't watch One Piece, but I did read the manga. I got into it when it was over 600 chapters in. I briefly had watched some episodes from the old 4Kids dub that we're ordinarily not going to talk about, but for the sake of this argument, I'll just mention that that's where I got started. But I was not keenly motivated to start. What did eventually get me to start was actually people from the One Piece wiki who were also members of Fairy Tale wiki, or just would pop over to our chat room or whatever and talk to us. And I did get interested in reading the series, and then I read about certain plot developments, and I was like, oh, that seems interesting. All right, well, I guess I'll go read it. And I just spent the next couple of months binge reading 20 chapters a day, 30, 40 chapters a day, and eventually I got caught up. And for the most part, I think One Piece is definitely one of the better written shonen mangas. I think not only does Luffy have outstanding character development, but I think all the other characters have grown really well. And I think that Oda is one of the better background writers in so far as character backgrounds. So whatever happened to character's story. I think he's generally done that better than most of his peers. So I, in general, recommend reading One Piece. I do know that the anime is very long and probably a little bit too fillery as well for most people, so I don't
Yeah,
usually recommend that.
I would
But if you
agree.
want to read a great story and story alone, I do generally recommend the manga. Now, I'm not up to date with the manga. In fact, I actually dropped it a while ago just because I started going to school and school got very cumbersome, so I didn't really have the time to keep investing into it. But overall, like I have I have a very positive opinion of One Piece. So if anyone's is interested in it, I think it's just something you kind of have to hit the ground running. And I mean, honestly, if you're not already super into it by chapter 150-ish, then you're probably not gonna be super into it anyway. But I also think the first 150 chapters are very well done. So that's my take on it.
And that's like you said, hit the ground running. I think that's the cool part about some of these that you can, you want to obviously try and read in chronological order, one arc after another. But if there's a certain arc that catches your eye, you can read that particular arc. And I think One Piece does a good job of that, of having a good and a bad job. They have a lot of really good arcs they'd love to read, and then a few that you don't, particularly want to read, which is fine because there's so many arcs. Not one particular arc usually is going to be that immensely important that you have to read it. So you can really just, like you said, hit the ground running and kind of pick one that you want to read, right? Now, I think that's a little segue here into a different anime. That's a really good thing that Fate does. Where regardless if you like the series, like the characters, there's one arc, one series that will catch your eye, most likely, just because of the way that it's not necessarily good versus evil, but just desire versus desire.
Yeah, that's definitely a theme that's come up a lot when it comes to the Fate series, and I'm sure Dav would very much agree with you because he's also a really big fan of that. And it's also not a series that's divided up quite a bit. I mean, every anime is 12 episodes or 25 episodes, so it's definitely not one of those mass binge animes like a Bleach or a One Piece or a Naruto. So, I mean, I obviously recommend it, and Fate Zero is easily one of the best things I've ever watched. So, people, get on it.
Yeah, it is. I agree. Fate Zero is spectacular. I think it's art, it's storytelling, a little bit of a fairy tale aspect too, where without spoiling the story, at a certain point, decisions have to be made with alliances. But like you said, it's very split up. Every kind of series, Zero, Grand Order, Graphica, they all have their own plot line with the same characters. So you see development of characters spread across so many series, but really, if you want to, you can only watch one and you see the 2, 3 arcs that are in that series, and then just you don't have to watch the rest.
Yeah, they're all quite well self-contained, so it's very much a stop and go anime. Stop when you want, go when you want.
Yeah, self-contained is definitely the right word I think to use. Each story is its own story, and that's it, you know. And like you said, stop and go. I really agree with that point, where you can, even within its own series, you can stop after a certain event and then just continue on, where you were without sacrificing any. I guess you should say when you binge and you watch 60 episodes at a time, you carry the idea from episode 1 and it evolves, but it's still very similar to episode 60. With Fate, you can carry an idea from episode 1 to 5, stop, pick it up, and you could either have the same idea or a different idea, but it's still a good idea, which is the cool part about that anime and the whole dynamic of teams.
Yeah, totally. That's definitely one of the best aspects of Fate in general.
I would like to touch a little bit on art style for Fairy Tail, and we're jumping around a little bit anime wise, but I think I see a lot of mentions about the studio change in 2014 and how that kind of impacted viewership a little bit and just kind of the concept of the show a little bit. So pre 2014, you could definitely see a softer look on faces. Like if you go and look at any first season, probably episode, you could see a little bit more rounded eyes, still a sharp facial structure, but not very sharp. And it's, colors are really vivid, really filled in. You know, there's a lot of attention to detail, but it's definitely a brighter feeling. And then post 2014, you see a lot sharper aspects, a lot more mature facial structure. It's a lot less vivid. Like you see Natsu's hair gets less vivid, Urza gets less vivid hair, like I said, sharper eyes. But with all this like emphasis on being sharp and being like sturdy and strong, it opens up a lot for the writing aspect to build on their backstories, and kind of it opens up for emotional vulnerability.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case, and I think it was very well demonstrated in the Tartarus arc because you see a very clear drop in the saturation, and it kind of goes with the theme of everything being much darker in that particular arc given the events that are going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely a good arc to think about because, like you said, the drop in saturation really helps the theme of just like darkness and sorrow. But then, all of a sudden you have Natsu coming out with flaming hands, and then everything comes back to just to good. Even though the art style hasn't changed, it's still a good feeling, which I think that's definitely because of the writing. But then it also emphasizes a quick pace and fluidity, which that could influence writing a little bit more than you may want art to influence it because of the quick pace. But I think what's really nice is that you see the action scenes with such quick pace in the anime specifically, and then Mishima does a really good job at slowing it way down, and like we said earlier, allowing those individual characters to develop within the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of people would agree with you as well. So, is there anything else you'd like to discuss while we're at this point?
No, I think I've covered just about everything that I know I need to cover. I would like to thank Spidey, Dav, Jinx, Michelle, Kuro, all of the mods for making such a good Discord server. That's how I got exposed to this podcast, and this podcast has been such a great listen. I was first exposed to Dav's episode 8, I believe, or 9, and I just went
Yeah,
back
it
and
was the
listened.
eighth.
Is the 8th? So I went back and listened to all of them, and I listened to the ninth, and I loved it because kind of similar to what he was saying, there's so many different perspectives on every single angle that it's just really cool to see. I didn't think about that. That's a totally different idea to what I had, and maybe then you mix ideas. And that's the cool part about I think this podcast is that you really see everybody's perspective. And I mentioned this in the Discord, but you do a great job at providing flow and direction to this podcast.
Well, thank you, man. I'm glad to hear you think so. I really appreciate the compliment. So, yeah, if there's nothing else, then I think we'll end it here. So, again, Aiko, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate the time taken to be here. I know that, we do have a little bit more free time these days than we used to given the situation, but it is what it is at the end of the day. And getting to know all the fairy tale fans and meeting people and getting to know new perspectives is what we're all here for at the end of the day.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a blast of an experience. I'm excited to listen to people as they come on and listen to their perspectives as well.
Me too. So, people, if you're interested, fill out the application form that's pinned in the Discord or available through its Twitter link. For now, I'm the King of Uncool. This has been Aiko for episode 10 of Fairy Tale Wiki Twitter Talk, and we will see you next time.